When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Two Washington State University researchers are continuing their investigation of firearm safety practices in rural Washington. Joining us on the PNW Ag Network hotline is one of those researchers, Elizabeth Weybright, Associate Professor and Adolescent Extension Specialist in WSU's Human Development Department. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for the time. Now, can you tell us how you're conducting this research, and just as importantly, why are you investigating firearm safety practices in rural Washington?
So I want to speak to the why first, which is that we know nationwide firearms are the leading cause of death for adolescents. In rural communities, that's typically due to suicide, and in urban communities, that's typically due to homicide. And so really, this is just part of a broader line of work to understand what's happening and how can we respectfully engage with rural communities to protect adolescents and children, to make sure they're safe and to prevent them from dying. And the what are we doing in this project? Specifically, we just wrapped up a study where we spoke to rural adolescents, and we just wanted to understand, what do you see is happening in your community related to firearms? One of the main findings that we found is that rural adolescents reported doing kind of what we would expect to see in rural communities. They're seeing firearms and they're using firearms in really normative, what we call pro-social ways. This often means that they're using firearms in family settings, with parents, with grandparents, going to ranges, doing shooting sports, doing hunting, things like that. But that's one step, and we really want to take the next step to say, okay, we heard from the kids. I want to hear from the parents now. So what are parents' side of things, and particularly, how are parents engaging with kids within the home to talk about firearm storage and safety practices?
So, Elizabeth, are you looking at the safety steps that the parents go through, whether that's a lockbox or making sure the firearm and the bullets are separated, or is this more how are parents talking to their children about firearm safety, or what exactly are you looking for?
That's a good question. So we kind of want to know both of those things. You know, we have some national data on how firearms are stored in homes, especially homes with children and adolescents present. But we know that rural families in rural communities are more likely to have firearms in the home, again, because it's part of the culture and part of the way of life. So we want to understand, one, can we talk to families about how you're storing firearms in the home? And two, we really think that adolescents can kind of be a strong voice in the family for appropriate and safe storage behaviors to keep everyone safe. So that's the other central question is, how do you incorporate adolescents into the conversation, or do you incorporate them at all? And this is really a parent decision.
In your assessment, when you're getting feedback from these rural communities, what's been the temperature of the room from these parents and these families who, I mean, it seems like anytime you bring up a gun issue, whether it's gun rights or anything, people get very polarized. So have you been able to get a lot of response one way or the other?
That's a great point. You're right. We knew going into this work that not everybody is interested in speaking with us about firearms. So I work very closely with a colleague at WSU Extension, Ashley Hall, and she is our 4-H shooting sports leader. And so she helps to kind of bring that local expertise and knowledge and be a trusted resource. And so that has really been a successful strategy in engaging rural communities, because they're speaking with Ashley, who is oftentimes someone they know and someone they trust when it comes to firearms. However, there are still folks that aren't interested in talking with us, and that's okay. We will be missing their voice. And there are families who are still interested in, and at least they were interested in letting their adolescent chat with us. And so we anticipate they're interested in talking with us as well, or they would at least be open to. But it brings an important point of how do we do this and talk to families in rural communities in a way that's respecting how they want to approach the conversation. And that can be a challenging dynamic to balance with kind of doing the research side, but doing it in a really thoughtful and intentional way.
So, Elizabeth, where do you go from here? How far are you into the research, and when can we expect to start seeing some findings?
Yes, that's what I always want to jump to the end as well to know, okay, what did we find? We are just in the early stages of this work, kind of the data collection stage. And so if you come back and talk to me next summer, I can tell you what we found. I will say that we do have an idea of what the next steps are, or at least the process for the next steps. And my bigger vision, or the bigger picture here, is that we want to work in and with rural communities to develop interventions that work, to develop interventions that promote safety and work for what's going on in that community and the needs and the kind of situation that's happening in that community. That's research that really hasn't been done a lot because the federal funding for firearms research really has increased since about 2019. And so this work is kind of ramping up across the country, and it really hasn't been done in Washington State. The funding we have currently for this work is from the Grandmothers Against Gun Violence, their foundation, which is really focused on Washington State. And so I'm excited to have those kind of state level and state specific findings to inform some of our local next steps. I did want to add that we have strong collaborations, not just at WSU and with Washington State University Extension, but also with the University of Washington as part of their Firearm Injury and Policy Research program. And so this isn't just an Eastern Washington thing or a rural Washington thing, that we are collaborating across the state on this work. We are here really to protect and prevent harm from adolescence has kind of been my bigger focus, that we know that firearms are, again, the leading cause of death, and how can we stop that? How can we slow that down? And so, yes, how can we do that in a way that really is meeting people where they are?
Elizabeth Weybright, Associate Professor and Adolescent Extension Specialist in Washington State University's Human Development Department. Thanks so much for joining us right here on the PNW Ag Network.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.